Are you a Malazan fan? No? Nothing to see here then. Move along. Move along. Oh, yes? Excellent. Come on in. We have some special things to talk about today. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this show, and I'm here to bring a book review episode to you about Forge of Darkness, book one of Stephen Erikson's Kharkanas Trilogy. If you haven't read that yet, it's okay. This will be mostly spoiler light. But at the end, I do have a full spoil commentary section. I'll give you a warning before I move into that. If you have read it, you'll definitely want to stick around till the end. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to give us a like. And check out all our other content. I got a bunch of Malazan here, but plenty of other things. We hope you'll subscribe and enjoy the content we keep putting out almost every day. The Kharkanas Trilogy is not done yet. We only have 2 books. This is the first of them, which came out in 2012, and like everything else in Malazan's universe, it's epic fantasy. I'd even say this is epic dark fantasy. Why did I read this book? After Malazan Book of the Fallen wrapped up in 2011, Stephen Erikson wasn't done. Thank goodness. This was his grand return to the amazing world he and Ian C.S. Ullmann had dreamed up and been writing so much in. This came out the very next year with The Crippled God finishing Malazan Book of the Fallen in 2011. And here we go, 2012, Erikson dives back in. I decided to read it partly because I want to read everything that's created in this Malazan world, but also I was curious. Could this be as good as Malazan Book of the Fallen? And could this give me answers about things that series left me bloody clueless about? Well, I got some answers here, that's for sure. Now, I will say one odd thing here. When I keep talking about Malazan Book of the Fallen and this being written, this Kharkanas Trilogy in the Malazan world, Malazan just doesn't really apply to this book. This is definitely pre-Malazan by a couple of years. The setting of this story takes place primarily in and around the Teist or Tisti. You can decide how you want to say it. I used to always say the Tisti, but I'm kind of getting used to saying Teist. Even the audiobooks can't make up their mind. But the Teist realm of Kirald Galain and its capital city of Kharkanas. Now, we came upon Kharkanas over the course of Malazan Book of the Fallen, and some amazing and really weird events take place there. Here, we're way back in time, dealing with the events in this realm, and I believe what's going to lead up to its fall, with players traveling from Kharkanas to Kharkanas, things happening in the city, things happening around it. Pretty much everything that happens in this story is related to Kharkanas and to the power base of the Teist centered in that city. The time is thousands of years prior to the primary events of Malazan Book of the Fallen. In fact, humans, they're not even a thing yet when this story is taking place. What is it about? Again, spoiler light. This is hard. How do I give a spoiler light summary for this book? Basically, this story gives us the much needed background behind many of the immortal players involved in Malazan Book of the Fallen. Powerful and mysterious beings who we only vaguely came to understand. We couldn't entirely comprehend much about these characters because there was too much history, too much backstory that was not revealed. Well, this is that backstory. At least pretty much the beginning of the chaos that resolves, or at least partially resolves, by the end of Malazan Book of the Fallen. Obviously, based on the trilogy name Kharkanas, I was hopeful that this would have something more about that Kharkanas storyline. Again, it left me scratching my head going, okay, this is cool, but why? What? I don't understand. So yes, I was hopeful for something more about this. because it was the least understood part of Malazan Book of the Fallen for me. Beautifully, we do get answers already in this first book of the trilogy. So this appears to be the story of how everything starts to go horribly wrong for the Teist, how they end up losing Corald Galain, and how so many antagonistic relationships come to be. We've got backstories on the Teist as a people, on Father Light and Mother Dark, on Draconis and the brothers, Animander Rake, Silchus Ruin, and Andarist. We've got Kaladin Brood, Gothos, Hood, the daughters of Draconis, Spite, Envy, and Malice, and so many more. We also have characters of that time who are new to us, ones that do not appear in Malazan Book of the Fallen, as we experience a story of machinations and jealousy, Teist power plays, and betrayal. Forget about Malazan Book of the Fallen. This story on its own has legs and is really rich and enjoyable. And through it, we're discovering how so much that ends up wrong got started. This story has all the richness and depth of plot that I've come to love in Erikson's writing, with key actions and plot points interwoven with random conversations amongst both key characters and random Joes, pondering the most complex issues of life in one breath and the most inane and ridiculous ones in the next. This book makes me go, and then just chuckle at back and forth constantly. And it's all delicious. But the story, the greater story that's unfurling, is of the Teist and how their civilization unravels. And that's deep, dark, and fascinating. Eminently intriguing. Erikson's work on characters in this book is brilliant, as he always is. The characters are rich and complex and plentiful. There's a lot of different characters to keep tabs on here. The key characters that fascinated me in this story were Envy, Spite, and Malice. Those sisters, again, we see them as children. And oh my goodness, I would never want them in my classroom when I was a teacher. We see Animander Rake and Silchus Ruin, the brothers, who we meet much later in Malazan Book of the Fallen, but here to see them at an earlier part in their lives. Wow. Draconis. I loved getting more Draconis. He deserved so much more page time than he got in Malazan Book of the Fallen, and here, so much Draconis. Yes. Then there's Hunral and Sintara. Ooh, these are Teist that I just loved being invited to hate on. Oh, and then there's the manic and quite tragic artist, Kataspara. What a character. Tragic indeed. But the best of the characters that I come to know is a whole group that I knew nothing about before. The Azathanai. I mean, we knew there was the House of the Azath and something going on there. Well, we get so much understanding, so much more. And yes, also much more to puzzle about as we learn about the Azathanai. This incredible revelation of who they are, clarification of what they bring to the world has been delightful. Erikson's writing style continues to wow the reader with such beautiful prose as he conveys a narrative in a beautifully engaging style. I enjoy how the story seems to meander at times, yet in reality, every random conversation and every single occurrence is laced with meaning. You must pay attention to each and every detail that Erikson puts there. No words are wasted. There is so much to catch. I appreciate his approach with POVs. Erikson is again using so many different point of views to tell this story. From the strong and powerful's perspective to that of measly peons. Just as he's done in his previous Malazan books, it continues to work exceedingly well. There are some powerful themes that are emphasized in this book. The ones that jump out to me is destiny, and what role you may have to play in how your life plays out. The nature of power and the impact it has on the people who pursue it and the people who suffer because of it. Civilizations rise and fall, and the scope of what that means to a world and to a people. And then moral ambiguity, because there's not just a black and white here. See what I did? Not just a light and dark. There's a lot of gray going on. And I think we'll be getting to that too, if you know what I mean. I better save that for the spoiler commentary section. For warnings about this book, I would mention there's a lot of graphic violence. I mean, we're talking war and death, but things get really real. I mean, genocide is going on here. I mentioned the moral ambiguity, of course, so people who make controversial decisions might not sit well with you. And there are some very dark philosophical themes that are pondered. There's also some instances of psychological trauma and cruelty. So, nothing much to worry about. My rating and recommendation? Well, this book took me right back into my love of Malazan Book of the Fallen. It earns a strong 5 out of 5 stars. Erikson gets right back up to peak writing with this book. There is no drop off from what I had seen before. It's beautifully written, and it satisfied my need to know more about those previous things I learned about in so many ways, while bringing me into a brand new story of an ancient past that's absolutely fascinating and tragic, especially knowing what will eventually happen to some of these people and because of some of these events that I see playing out now. You'd think, since you know what's going to happen, it might not be as interesting. Nah, nonsense. I need to know how these things happen, and I want more. All right, I'm going to move into my full spoil commentary section here. So if you haven't read this book yet, this is when you should jump out. But be sure to leave any comments you have in the comment box. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. So, okay, you're still here. You've read the book. There were so many fascinating character reveals that I just loved. And one point of major speculation that I'll save for the end here. But let me talk about some of these character reveals. First, this whole race of the Azathanai. If this was something I was supposed to have picked up, reading Malazan Book of the Fallen, I missed it. Maybe a reread, I would have got it. But here, it's so on display, and it's lovely to get some better understanding of what these houses of the Azath come from, what they're about. I loved discovering that the Azathanai, these godlike beings, are so godlike that some of them actually do just become gods because they want to, and because people choose to worship them, like Mal and Cruel. And then others choose to simply blend into other races because they can make themselves look like whatever they want. They physically can transform into any sort of substance. So Draconis, a Teist warrior and sorcerer, no, he's a Zathanai. Okay, he's just one of these others. There's so much diversity to these beings. And then to come to understand that Kaladin Brood is an Azathanai. I mean, he was just this strange, odd creature, immortal, ascended type being in Malazan Book of the Fallen, and we don't know why. We don't know where he comes from. Why is he different? Now we know. But we also know why he's connected to Animander Rake. It happens all the way back here and keeps him kind of locked into this one way of being for thousands of years. Amazing. It was just so gosh darn interesting, and I look forward to learning more. Also, seeing how the Teist break up into the Teist Andi and the Teist Leosin, that was excellent. As well as learning the origins of the Sheikh. None of that made any sense to me in Malazan Book of the Fallen. I tried to be interested, but I was like, why? What? Now? Okay. All right, we got something going on here. This is awesome. And then seeing the introductions of dragons into the story, and still there's clearly backstory on the Alaint, the dragons, that goes farther back, and I still don't entirely know what's going on there. Maybe I'll get more. But to see it that at this point there's really no tie between the Teist and the Alaint. I mean, later on we know Animander Rake and some of the others turn into dragons when they choose to. That is not a thing yet. There's something that's going to happen here. And I caught the Atataro dragon appears in this story. Okay, we're gonna get things here that fill in so many holes, and I'm loving that. But I do want to know, how is this change going to happen so that the Teist will end up being able to become dragons, to veer into them. This is going to be interesting. Oh, speaking of interesting, envy, spite, and malice? Dang! Downright creepy. Now, we knew they were the daughters of Draconis, knowing Draconis was a Zathanai, and we meet in this story who he hooked up with to create these kids, at least I think. It explains a few things, but wow. Ugh. You know what I'm talking about. But you can't help being interested in one of their chapters. Now, let's talk about Draconis for a moment. He makes some big mistakes in this book. I'm not entirely sure what's motivating him other than just genuine affection, love, devotion for Mother Dark. But he's doing things that anyone should know is not going to end well. He's even being told this by other Azathanai, but he perseveres. He goes forward. And yet, these Azathanai, they seem to love to screw around. There are others in the background meddling, which is going to cause some of the complications of what Draconis does. So it's not all his fault. And yet, dude. Another element I want to comment on is the Jaghut. You know, we get to see them before they come into this great conflict with the Amas that will run for thousands of years and lead to their near extermination. But they were already a weird race. They decided to basically break apart their civilization, to not move forward and advance, but just kind of to separate and fade. What was going on there? I'm not sure, but I'm liking what I get to see and learn about with the Jaghut at this point. The one last point, my speculation that I wanted to get to is that I think in this book, we've already now met some of those who go on to become Emas through that ritual of Talan that they will do. And they're just Azathanai. There's some of the Azathanai who are going to turn into Talan Emas. Am I correct? I don't know for sure, but that's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm thinking. And so it's just another segment of Azathanai that become the Talan Emas? Really? Is that okay? I'm going to keep paying attention to this as I move through the trilogy. I'm already reading book 2. I don't know if I'll get all the answers yet there, or have to wait for book 3 that I think Erikson is actively writing at this point. I'm already 25% into Fall of Light, book 2. And I have to admit, the first 15% did not suck me in like this book did. I was like, this is dragging a little. This is meandering. I'm finding my attention wandering. But after that first 15%, it's picking up again. And by 25%, now I'm locked in. I'm ready. I'm just sucking it back in. So good stuff. Love this trilogy. Sad that I'm going to have to wait a while for the third one, but not as long as some of you have been waiting since that second one came out in 2017. That's what I have. Okay, give me your comments. Let me know anything you'd like. Please don't spoil my speculation. You can comment on my speculation, but don't give me the answer. I don't want to know. I want to learn it for myself. Plus, others who haven't read this yet might read the comments, so comment with care. But thanks for taking the time to listen, and I'd love to hear just your general thoughts about the book and your experience with it. Also, take a look at the show notes for the other ways you can interact with Zach and I, our social media, our email, an invitation to our Discord server, and a link to our Patreon page. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.